Perhaps this story will begin just like many other mystical stories, movies, or books. You might call it a cliché, but unfortunately, such clichés often happen to people, and often turn skeptics into believers. And sometimes, the living even become the dead. And the reason for it all is a new home. A home, whether it's an apartment, a house, or even just a room in a dormitory, remembers everything. The walls can hold many secrets, and until you start digging deeper, they will keep silent about them. That's exactly what happened to me. I won't tell you who I am, what my name is, where I work, what my dog's name is, or anything like that. I just want to tell you what happened to me a couple of weeks ago. Nothing more, nothing less. Something that turned my life upside down and made me jump at every rustle, every gust of wind or unfamiliar voice. The thing is, I suddenly felt like a grown-up, self-sufficient guy. So, I decided to move out of my parents' place. I had my reasons for that. We argued a lot and so on. I don't want to talk about it. Of course, I wasn't even thinking about some fancy place with a terrace and a beautiful view. An ordinary one-bedroom apartment in a regular apartment building was enough for me. The main thing was that it fit my budget. After all, my savings were pretty limited. I wasn't counting on a nice renovation either. But of course, I wanted something at least a bit better than a musty old Soviet-era place that smelled like a deceased grandmother. And after a few days of searching, I found such a place. I found it through an acquaintance who had a friend who was a realtor. The very next day after we spoke on the phone, he was already waiting for me at the given address to show me my new place. The price, I wouldn't say it was expensive, but it wasn't cheap either. You know how in horror movies, they always show that if there's something weird about a place, or if someone died there, it's rented or sold for next to nothing. But here, it was a bit different. As we were going up the stairs, I looked around with interest, taking in everything from the worn-out railings to the equally shabby walls and some of the doors. I hope my door won't look like the one on this apartment, I thought to myself, glancing at apartment number 26. And the door there looked like a light punch could easily knock it off its hinges and send it crashing into the hallway. Yeah, the stairwell was definitely not in the best condition. And here we are. The landlady here is a bit peculiar, I'd even say a little quirky, but I think the apartment will do for a start. Well, that's if you really need to move in urgently, and later we can find you something better if you want. But when he rang the doorbell and it opened, I thought to myself that I probably wouldn't need to look for anything else. Probably. Hello, Anna Vasilyevna. Oh, hello, you came to see the apartment? Please, come in. And why did he think she was strange? To me, she just seemed like an ordinary older woman. So far, I hadn't noticed anything unusual about her. We stepped over the threshold and entered the apartment. Come on in. Here is the kitchen, and further down the hallway is the room. The room is large, so you could even fit 2 people here. The landlady smiled. Toilet, bathroom, everything as it should be. Everything works. We walked around the apartment, inspecting everything. And I have to say, I liked everything at that moment. It was a bright, cozy den that suited me in every way. Sure, it wasn't a European-style renovation, but it wasn't some old Soviet junk either, just a simple apartment, nothing special. That's how it seemed to me back then. Inside, I was already fired up, eager to hand the landlady the money, sign the contract, and see them out the door so I could start settling in little by little. But for the sake of decency, I still had to look at everything. So look, there's the storage room over there, it's big. There's all sorts of junk in there that I was too lazy to take out to the trash. And there are last year's preserves in there too. If you want, help yourself, don't be shy. Well, that's basically everything. When she started talking about the storage room, her voice seemed to tremble a little. It was actually pretty noticeable. She even tried to smile, but it was like she couldn't manage it, even though before that she hadn't stopped smiling at all. And one more thing, I noticed that when we were signing the contract, filling out all the details and other stuff, her hands started to shake. And her hands weren't just trembling a little, they were really shaking, so much so that she messed up 3 copies of the contract. She kept jerking and crossing out everything she had written. After apologizing 1,000 times, we finally managed to get it done. I got the keys and handed over the money. You can smoke in the apartment, but please try not to make too much noise. Because there's a sick old lady living next door, she might call the police over the slightest sound at night, so be careful. And by the way, no one has died in the apartment. Everything's fine here. You don't have to worry about that. Even if someone had died here, it wouldn't be a big deal. I smiled. After all, I don't believe in all that fuss about ghosts, poltergeists, and so on. So, I saw the realtor and the landlady out of the apartment and flopped down on the couch. Finally, I'm alone. God, what a pleasure. Man, I'm starving like a dog. I should go to the store. Leaving all my stuff behind, I got ready to go shopping. Then I hear a sound. I was almost out the door, thinking, did I imagine that? Or not? Yeah, there was something. Sounded like it came from the storage room. I walked through the apartment again and opened the storage room. And sure enough, it was packed with junk, everything covered in dust and dirty. I even sneezed a couple of times. But one thing really caught my attention. There was a mannequin lying on the floor, a really old one. Apparently, it was the source of the noise that made me open the storage room. For some reason, it had fallen over, even though, judging by the dust marks, it had just been standing next to the shelf. It's strange that something like a mannequin, and not even a particularly impressive one, would be in this apartment. I picked it up and put it back the way it was. Let me tell you, it wasn't exactly light. Pretty heavy, actually. I looked around the storage room a bit more, but my rumbling stomach forced me to hurry to the store and quickly make myself something to eat. I got dressed, put on my shoes, and went outside. I was in a great mood. Everything had turned out even better than I expected. I didn't have to pay for the last few months, and I could still hear the rustle of bills in my pocket. So, I did my shopping. I'm walking through the entrance feeling pleased. And then suddenly, it was like everything inside me tightened up. A strange sense of anxiety settled in my mind. But those thoughts were immediately drowned out by the realization that I was finally living alone and could do whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted. But when I opened the door to the apartment and walked in, I realized something was wrong. And when I turned on the light, I understood exactly what it was. Remember that mannequin I mentioned? It was lying on the floor again. The door to the storage room was also slightly ajar. That's odd, I thought. I took off my shoes and went into the storage room. I was pretty sure I had left it in place. Besides, the mannequin is stable on its own. It wouldn't just fall over like that. But whatever, let it lie there. I just locked the door with the latch and went to the kitchen. I won't drag this out. I ate and spent the rest of the evening at the computer, and then I started feeling sleepy. And it was that night when the first strange things started happening in this apartment, specifically in the storage room. I fell asleep quickly and slept very well. But in the middle of the night, it was as if a knock yanked me out of my sleep. Half asleep, I had no idea where it had come from. Or maybe it was just a dream, but that possibility disappeared on its own when the knock sounded again. It wasn't very loud, more like someone just lightly hit the wall with their fist. I grabbed my phone from under the pillow and turned on the flashlight. I shone it toward the hallway. Seemed like no one was there. There were no more knocks after that. And, not wanting to get out of my already warm bed, I just turned over to the other side and drifted off to sleep again. But once again, it didn't last long, because the knocking started up again. This time, the knock seemed a bit louder, or maybe stronger. I sat up on the couch again and turned on the flashlight. Now something was telling me that I'd have to leave my warm bed and actually check what was going on. Because the sounds really were coming from the closet. I walked into the hallway, turned on the light, and opened the closet. Everything was exactly as it had been when I closed it. Strange. Maybe the sound wasn't coming from the closet, maybe it was the neighbor, but no, the knocking seemed to be really close. Just in case, I walked over to the door and looked through the peephole. There was no one in the hallway. The landing was empty. I went back to my room. The sounds had stopped as well. It felt like someone was deliberately trying to keep me from falling asleep. At that point, I didn't even suspect that there was something wrong with this apartment. But there really was something wrong with it. I lay back down in bed. This time, I couldn't fall asleep as quickly, and I didn't hear any more knocking. Still, by 3 in the morning, I finally managed to drift off into the world of dreams. The very next day, I woke up with a terrible headache. I slept through my classes. It was 12:30 in the afternoon. Usually, when I sleep for a long time, I get a headache as a matter of course. But this time it hurt even more. And one more thing. At first, I didn't notice what I saw on my way to the kitchen. But when I was already in the kitchen making some tea, I realized that the door to the storage room was open. And everything would have been fine if I hadn't locked it with the latch last night. All the windows were closed. There was no draft at all. What could I possibly blame it on? And even if there had been a draft, the door wouldn't have opened that easily. But what I found behind the door truly surprised me. In fact, I'd even say it scared me. The mannequin was standing by the wall, right where it was supposed to be. What on earth is going on here? First, the knocking in the middle of the night, and now this. Who put it there like that? Did it get up from the floor and stand there by itself or something? I remember it was lying on the floor all night. God, my head hurt so much. I think I had some pills around here somewhere. After taking a pill, I got back into bed and opened my laptop. But no matter what I did, watched movies, played games, or just zoned out on YouTube, I couldn't stop thinking about that mannequin. I hadn't been feeling well all day today, so I spent the whole day in the apartment and didn't even go outside. And somehow by evening the events of the night had faded from my mind. I got hooked on a television series and completely immersed myself in it. The second night turned out to be no better than the first. Tonight, I couldn't fall asleep at all. I tossed and turned in bed until about 4 in the morning. I'd close my eyes, but they'd open again on their own. I kept alternating between chills and fever, and interestingly, I checked my temperature and it was normal, but the headache just wouldn't go away. But after 4 in the morning, late autumn outside, still dark, strange things started happening again. I had just started to fall asleep when I heard a sound again. But this time, it wasn't coming from the storage room. It was from the kitchen. And once again, any trace of sleep vanished instantly. But this time, it wasn't the same knocking. The sound was as if something metallic had fallen, maybe a knife, or some kind of utensil. Then, literally a few seconds later, something shattered. I was too scared to get out of bed and go check what it was. But the terrifyingly loud banging on the wall now, the kitchen wall, forced me to do it. I went into the hallway and, glancing toward the kitchen, I was simply stunned. Someone was standing there. It looked like a human silhouette. Some light from the street was coming in through the kitchen window, and in the darkness I was able to make out its outline. I quickly turned on the kitchen light, and I was left completely speechless. Standing in the kitchen was that very same mannequin. It was standing, leaning on the table, and on the floor there was a knife and a broken cup. How is this even possible, huh? Is it seriously just walking around the apartment on its own or what? It's just a damn piece of plastic, or whatever it's made of. And now I noticed another detail that I hadn't seen before. Its head was always turned toward me, no matter how it was standing. For example, in the storage room, it was standing with its right shoulder toward me, and its head was turned in that direction too. Now it's standing with its left shoulder forward, and again, its head is facing me. Without hesitating, I just got dressed, grabbed it, and threw it in the trash. The mannequin flew into the dumpster, and I went back home. I came back and lay down in bed again. But now, there was no way I could fall asleep. At least my headache started to go away little by little. It was already getting easier. But how did the mannequin end up in the kitchen? This was already beyond the pale, seriously. I had never seen anything like this before. Could I really have encountered something mystical, something paranormal? Well, there's just no other explanation. No one could have broken into the apartment and just blatantly carried the mannequin into the kitchen. I would have heard it. And why would anyone even do that? It's just nonsense. But what I can note is that as soon as the mannequin ended up in the trash, it felt like things got calmer in the apartment. And in my head too. And I finally managed to fall asleep, just as it was starting to get light outside. That day, everything went well. I woke up normally and went to university for my second class. I felt good, nothing hurt, and overall, everything was fine, just like for the following week. I cleaned up the apartment, rearranged the furniture a bit, and during all that time, I completely forgot about what had happened during the first 2 nights of living in this place. Everything was fine right up until one moment, which I'll talk about next. That day, I came home from university. I was absolutely exhausted from the day, and the only thing I wanted was to eat something tasty and then lie down to rest. And of course I remembered the preserves the landlady had mentioned. So I head to the hallway, opened the pantry. Oh my God! I slammed the door shut in a flash. Behind it stood the mannequin, the very same one I had thrown into the dumpster a week ago. Damn it. What the hell is it doing here? Who brought it back? Only the landlady has a key to the apartment. Now I understood why the realtor said she was a bit odd. I dial her number. It rings, but no one picks up. I broke out in goosebumps just from the sight of that mannequin. It looked battered, dirty, and uneven. One of its arms seemed like it was about to fall off at any moment. But it was still hanging on barely, but it was. Of course, I tried to comfort myself with the thought that the landlady had just brought it here. Don't know why. Maybe she really is crazy, but deep down I couldn't shake the feeling that this mannequin was something strange and paranormal, and that I either needed to get rid of it or just move out of the apartment. And as for what started happening next, I probably can't even find the words to describe it. I took it out of the trash again, but this time it didn't help. It kept coming back, over and over. I called the realtor, I called the landlady, no one answered, and after a while their numbers became completely unreachable. I was determined not to go back home, but because of what happened next, I had thought I never left my own home again. But while I lived in that apartment, I lived next to something strange and paranormal. At night, Things happened in the apartment that defied all logic. Objects were constantly falling, everything from small things to large ones. It was as if the mannequin had a life of its own. It moved around the apartment. I locked it in the storage room, but that didn't work. The door would still end up open, and the mannequin was never in the storage room. When I came home from school, I constantly found it in different places, and recently even in different poses. Bent, straight, with an arm or leg bent. I forgot what normal sleep was. I stopped eating. It was as if weakness had settled in my body. One day, I couldn't take it anymore, and grabbing a hammer, I just started beating the mannequin with it. I just wanted to smash it into pieces, gather everything into a bag, and take it out to the trash like that. But what I found just finished me off completely. It made me pack up all my things in a matter of seconds and get out of that apartment as fast as I could. Inside the mannequin, there was a human body. And here I was, wondering why it was so heavy. Oh my god, I smashed its head with a hammer, and some kind of liquid started oozing out. Not blood, I don't even know what to call it. Basically, the point is, there was a decomposing body inside the mannequin. At that moment, I almost threw up. As soon as I smashed the head, the stench of a decomposing corpse hit my nose, and some kind of liquid spread across the floor. I immediately grabbed all my stuff and ran away from that place. Yeah, I went to my parents and told them everything, down to the smallest detail. At first, they didn't believe me, but when the police came and accused me of killing the apartment owner, they believed me. That happened a few days after I got out of there. Interrogations started coming one after another. It came out during questioning that the owner had disappeared during the very week when the mannequin was supposedly lying in the trash, or maybe it wasn't there at all. The fact remains, the landlady's corpse was found inside the mannequin. My god, that's horrible. But the point is, the body had already started to decompose. So how did the mannequin move around the apartment? Damn it. No one believed me, even though I hadn't killed anyone. I was telling them the truth. The trial is coming up soon. I don't know how it will end, but I will never ever forget this story for as long as I live. After these events, I started to believe in both God and the devil, and that mannequin still comes to me in my most terrifying nightmares.